Let's get a view from the House. Joining us, two distinguished House members, Peter Welch, Democrat from Vermont, and GOP Conference Chair Kathy McMorris Rodgers, a Republican from the state of Washington. Kathy McMorris Rodgers, welcome back. Let me just go to you right now. First up, can you do business with President Obama? He is opposed to the sequester. He wants to rewrite it, defer it, change it. Can you do business?
We'd like to have that discussion with the president. I think it's important to remember that the sequester, these devastating cuts, were President Obama's ideas. It was the Republicans that have put forward 2 times now proposals to replace these devastating cuts with other ways to reduce spending. We passed a bill 6 weeks ago, and we passed one 6 months ago. And what we need is for the president, we need the Democrats to put their proposal forward if they don't want these devastating cuts to take effect on March 1st.
Peter Welch, why is it that spending cuts are bad for the economy, but tax increases are somehow not bad for the economy? I don't understand that logic.
Well, we need both. I mean, I think that's what the president's been saying. We've been having this debate back and forth, but bottom line, we do need revenues. That's part of the problem. I think the American people clearly supported that with the election of President Obama. And we need some spending restraint. The big area where we need it is in health care. I mean, whether it's the taxpayer-supported health care or private employer-sponsored health care, the rising health care cost is really an impediment to growth in the economy. And if we can find ways to bring down the cost of health care that is not just putting it on the backs of the beneficiaries, then I think we could make some progress and have a win-win.
Well, Kathy McMorris Rodgers, the CBO report that just came out, which shows a slight decline in the deficit in a year or two, but it goes back up over $1 trillion in 10 years because of Social Security, because of Medicare. And yet the president and the Democrats don't seem to want to touch entitlements. How do you get out of that box?
The president and the Democrats don't want to cut spending. We need them to acknowledge that we have a spending problem. And that hasn't happened. In fact, over the weekend, Speaker Pelosi was saying, well, it's not a spending problem, it's a deficit problem. Well, the way we get these deficits is by spending too much. And then even today, Hoyer, the minority whip, was saying it's not a spending problem, it is a pay-for problem. Bottom line, it's spending, it is. And Americans recognize that the government has to live within its means and that this burden is costing us economic growth. It is costing us jobs. It means that people can't make the hiring decisions to move this country forward, get our economy growing again.
Well, you know, actually, it's got to be both. I mean, the fact is, there's a lot of places we're not making investments that you need if you're going to build a middle class and a strong economy. You've got to invest in education. That's down. You've got to invest in infrastructure. America is a pothole. So there's areas where we have to find a way, Kathy and I, to put the investments in that are going to be good for business, job creation, in the middle class. There's other areas where we do have to bring really spending down, but through structural reform, and primarily in the area of health care. And that does apply to Medicare. You're right about that. But it applies to the general health care challenge that this country has, where our country pays the most and gets the least. If we can bring that cost curve down, that's going to leave money to be invested. It's going to be money in people's pockets.
And the president's health care bill that was signed into law just 2 years ago, we're seeing now the results of that bill, and premiums continue to go up for hardworking middle-class families all across this country, and we're hearing that health care costs are a problem.
But, you know, I think we got to put that behind us. We had it for 2 elections, and now we've got to figure out how do we make it work. Because your point that this is expensive is right. And we have to find a way to bring that health care cost down. So it's good for Medicare. It's good for private employers who are trying to provide good health care to their workers. So my hope we work together.
Yeah, but Kathy, here's what I don't understand. Democrats say it's not a spending problem. Ms. Pelosi says it's not a spending problem. Now, the president does think it's a spending problem. At least that's what Jay Carney said yesterday. But on the other hand, he's pulled back. The president has pulled back on Medicare. He said he would look at eligibility requirements. He said, no, he's not going to look at eligibility requirements. In other words, if you guys agree we have a spending problem, thank you for that. What are you going to do about it if you won't touch entitlements? That's the part nobody gets. Nobody understands that.
Exactly, and time again, the president is not willing to address the real spending, what's driving these deficits, what's driving the spending in government, and he'll come back to us needing more revenue, more taxes, but we never get to the point of actually addressing the spending side of this equation. And we need Republicans and Democrats to come to the table. We need to look at the spending side and start getting us on a path to actually balance budgets, pay down a debt, and that's going to create the certainty so that our economy can grow and people can make those investments, and we'll see a growth economy.
Well, we're talking past each other a little bit because healthcare needs reform to bring the cost down and also improve the economy. But a lot of the proposals I've heard from the other side.
Obama's healthcare plan isn't working?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we've had healthcare expenses going up before and after, or actually largely before the Obama bill. But the Pentagon's got to be part of this.
We're going to have both of you back, two of my favorite House members, in order to debate Obamacare. It's a great debate. Meanwhile, many thanks, Representative Peter Welch and Kathy McMorris Rodgers. We appreciate it. All right, let's go now to 2 CNBC.